Please sit. I would like to welcome members to this full council meeting at the Mechanics Theatre and thank our hosts, Burnley Leisure, for accommodating us. Can I ask members of the public not to talk during the meeting, as this can be very distracting for members of the council and others listening to the debate. Can I also ask everyone to ensure their mobile devices are switched to silent or preferably off and do not cause a distraction during the meeting. I would remind everyone that the use of mobile devices of any sort for the taking or making of phone calls is not permitted in the meeting. I would also remind members that they are required to stand when addressing the council meeting if you are able. We're not expecting a fire alarm tonight, but if one should occur, please follow the Mechanics staff and officers out of the venue to the assembly point in the car park to the rear of the town hall. This meeting is being streamed, and I would like to welcome those watching on the council's YouTube channel. When members are invited to speak, please wait for a microphone to be brought to you. At the rise of the meeting, please exit table by table. Members, as this is the first time you may have experienced the Deputy Mayor taking the chair, please could I remind members to address me as Madam Deputy Mayor. Thank you. Item 1 on the agenda, minutes of the previous meeting, 22nd of July 2021. I will move those minutes. Councillor Anwar, will you second those minutes?
I second the minutes, Madam Deputy Mayor.
All those in favour, say aye. The minutes are approved. Thank you. Item 2 on the agenda, declarations of interest. Are there any declarations of interest? Councillor Fewings. Thank you. Sorry, would you like to declare what that interest is? It's on.
Hello? Okay. So it's just other interest, which is prejudicial in item 60 in relation to a property 160 St James's Street.
Thank you, Councillor Fewings. Thank you. Item 3 on the agenda, Mayor's Communications.
There will be an extraordinary meeting on the 20th of October 21. Members will receive further details in due course. Thank you.
Thank you. Item 4 on the agenda, public question time.
Madam Deputy Mayor, we have the following speaker to address the Council, Mr John Rowe.
Thank you, Mr Rowe. Can you please come forward? You have 5 minutes to speak on governance arrangements at the Council, starting now. Oh.
Councillors, stupidity. I wonder...
Sorry, is it on?
Sorry. How you would define stupidity?
No. Yes, it's on now.
I'd say stupidity is doing something which doesn't benefit you and harms everybody else. And on that basis, over the years, Burnley Council has made some fairly stupid decisions. I'll give you a few examples. The Woodtop School, bought 12 years ago for £300,000. A listed building on the at-risk register with a planning permission to turn it into something really worthwhile. 12 years later, nothing done, in a state of collapse. It's only a matter of time before it's demolished. £300,000 of my money spent to destroy my heritage. Next door to it, Claremont Villas. Council decided to demolish it. There was a public outcry. In fairness to them, the then Liberal Council reacted to that by spending £30,000 on doing it up, facelifting, and a beautiful job was done. Only when the owner had died, the late Raymond Holdgate, for an officer of the council to come up with a wonderful plan to knock it down. It's been knocked down. That's another 150,000 quid wasted. Nearly £500,000 gone there. Nothing done with the site. Gets worse. Behind those two properties, 70 new houses built. The site, worth £1 million. We know it was worth £1 million because the company which took that site as a gift from this council immediately sold about a third of the site for £316,000. And it gets worse. The folly gets worse because that was repeated 6 times with the same company, Keepmo, and a 7th time with Gleeson's. Not a penny piece received for 8 sites on which a lot of new houses have been built. An absolutely disgraceful way to behave. And neither of those two companies, Gleeson's are a much nicer company than Keepmo to deal with, and they build better houses. But neither of them, quite honestly, needed national assistance. Now, I'm not suggesting that councillors who made those decisions, stupid as those decisions are themselves stupid in the sense that they haven't got a lot upstairs. Intelligent people can make stupid decisions. It happens. And the usual reason is either bad advice or a failure to adequately to consider the decision before you make it. And I'm looking at this. How can the people of this town, who if these decisions had been put to them in a decision to be made by all 60,000 of us, none of those decisions would have been made, none of them would have gone the way they did. How can we get better decisions? I'll give you another example, the Burnley Wood Community Centre. We had the town hall, the gallery of the town hall was filled with people complaining about the decision of the then council to knock that down. There is no community centre in Burnley Wood anymore. Massive public outcry. That evening, the decision was taken to get rid of it. Why? Because we had an inexperienced council leader not prepared to stand up to her officers. And also, an unwillingness to admit that any other party, in this case the Liberal Party, could be right about anything. Now, what I want to look at is how we can avoid bad decisions like these being made in the future. And the one thing I think that you could do is to have these decisions. Unfortunately, we can't have them made by the entire population. That's not practical. But we can have them made by more councillors. There are half a dozen or so of you on the executive, but there are 45 of you in total. Those of you who are not on the executive, you really don't have much more influence than I, a humble citizen. Now, there is something you can do about it, and your brethren in Pendle have done just that. They've got rid of the executive. Pendle doesn't have an executive. It has a committee system. The same
Mr. Rowe, 30 seconds.
Thank you. I want to know whether you will implement a committee system voluntarily, or whether we, the people of this town as your employers, have to get a referendum together to make you, which has happened elsewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Rowe. Almost on the dot. Councillor Anwar, would you like to reply to Mr. Rowe?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. In June 2019, the previous administration made a review of the existing system of governance, one of its priorities. A governance working group was established to look at the different options. The working group agreed that it would seek to ensure that the best governance for the borough was achieved. The Centre for Public Scrutiny provided support and guidance to the Council on the options. Members' views on the advantages and disadvantages of the current system were canvassed. And the CFPS held workshops with members to generate dialogue on the best model for Burnley. The working group met to consider the matter in July 2020. There was no consensus to move to a committee system, but the majority were in favour of strengthening the existing governance arrangements. Work on this is progressing, and one example is the improved dialogue between the Scrutiny Committee and the Executive. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Anwar, and thank you, Mr. Rowe. I hope that's an answer you can mull over. Item 5 on the agenda, notices of motion. Once a proposal has been moved and seconded, members may speak once and for a maximum of 5 minutes. 2 motions have been received, which are on your agenda. Item 5A, opposition to the local plan. Councillor Don Whittaker, will you move your motion? Thank you. Councillor Alan Hosker, will you second the motion? Deputy Mayor, thank you. Any member? Councillor Fewings.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I just want to congratulate the councillor on bringing a motion. It's the first motion in my tenure on the council from the Conservative group, and from a new councillor, that must have been quite a daunting prospect. So congratulations for bringing one. In terms of the substance of the motion, I have a number of issues with it, and I'd like to bring an amendment, which I think can now be circulated. Whilst it's being circulated, I'll just say the main changes to it are to acknowledge the fact that there has been a big U-turn from the government on their planning policy reform, which is not captured by the motion itself. So the motion itself is out of date. So we need to bring that in line. And what I've tried to do is make it so that we are essentially prioritising the climate and ecological emergency when we do consider any planning that comes before the council, but also because quite often we hear that there's no money to make the local plan better. One of the main changes is to lobby the government to provide that money so that we can amend the plan. Thank you.
I believe that... sorry, have you anyone to second that, please, Councillor Fewings? Thank you, Councillor Martin Hurt. Right. What? Is that right? Yeah, yeah. Right. The motion, the amendment, sorry, is before you. Yeah, yeah. There is a suggestion that you might wish to adjourn to discuss this. Yeah, well, we only discuss one at a time. So is that for an adjournment, Councillor Birtley-Whistle? Oh. You can? No, no. Right. Councillor Birtwistle.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I just wanted to comment on the motion put forward by Councillor Whittaker and to declare that I will be putting forward an amendment later, but we'll deal with that after the amendment from Councillor Fewings, and I'm sure that the officers will hand out our amendment later. But I would just like to comment on the amendment put forward by Councillor Whittaker. I think it's a strange amendment to say that the government have binned their proposals for planning. I think it was more or less forced upon them by the fact that the people of Amersham decided that the planning arrangements that the Tories were putting forward didn't suit the Shire counties of certainly of the south of England, and they certainly don't suit the Shire counties of the north of England. And I think the fact they got hammered in the by-election by the Liberal Democrats suddenly brought got the then Secretary of State the sack, and Michael Gove was then taken over as the Secretary of State, and one of his first actions was to bin the policy that this motion is asking us to adopt. So I'm somewhat confused, and no doubt that Councillor Whitaker will explain to this council this evening how on earth are we going to approve a motion when...
Councillor Birtwistle, we are actually discussing the amendment, not the motion.
Okay, well,
The
that's
amendment,
fine, no problem.
please. Yeah.
Well, I will be putting forward an amendment on this when this vote is taken. I'm sure
finish one
Councillor
before
Whitaker
the
has
other.
heard what I've
Yeah.
said.
Thank you. Any other member on the amendment? Then we shall move to the vote. Sorry, Councillor Amar, I couldn't see you in the glare of the lights.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I was just going to suggest that it'd be if we could have a short adjournment, just so that all members have got the opportunity to discuss it within their groups. Thank you.
Is there a seconder for that? Thank you, Councillor Graham. We shall adjourn for 10 minutes only. Sorry, those in favour say aye. It starts now.
standing to receive the Worshipful the Deputy Mayor, Miss Councillor Townley. Thank you.
Thank you, Foggy. Please sit. Thank you, members. We've gone slightly off script, so I'm going to ask Councillor Fewings if he would mind standing and reading out his amendment before we move on as expected.
Okay. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Okay, so apologies, this isn't going to make much sense, but I'll read it out. So the amendment is, in the first sentence, change to housing developments.
Councillor Fewings, sorry,
Hold on.
You can just
Mistake.
read the amended motion as opposed to each amendment. I think that's probably
Okay.
would make more sense.
Sorry.
That would make more sense. Okay, so the new motion would read, the Burnley local plan brought in by the Labour administration in 2018 has seen significant amounts of green spaces allocated for development in spite of strong objections of local residents and the significant number of vacant houses in the borough. This has included land off Redleys Road, where 125 homes are now being built, fields behind Smithyfield Avenue and Rosendale Road allocated to housing, Stony Home and Clifton Street Recreation Ground, which is a large ecologically diverse and cherished green space owned by this council and earmarked for development, and several new industrial estates units proposed for our green spaces rather than on derelict sites in need of regeneration. This council notes that the Burnley local plan, as it is currently constituted, does not command the support of residents within the borough, nor the majority of this council chamber. The council resolves to instruct the CEO to write to the local MP to call on his government to, 1, bring forward planning reforms to ensure that any new developments prioritises tackling the climate emergency by ensuring it is a material planning requirement that all new builds are net zero and the highest ecological standard, and 2, urgently provide full funding to this council so that it can revise the local plan to take account of the climate and ecological emergency.
Thank you, Councillor Fewings. And thank you, members. Any member? Any member? Councillor Ferrier.
Thanks, Madam Deputy Mayor. We've had a good look at this amendment brought forward by Councillor Fewings. I'll quickly dot through it, what were our thoughts on it. In the first place, for development, I mean, we think it's kind of splitting hairs a bit, but that's fine. The first part, the second part, we mentioned about Stormy and Clifton Street. These are brownfield sites, which is what was covered in the next bit, saying where is replaced with derelict sites. We said brownfield, which basically covers that, so I don't think there's any need for that. This council notes, well, we want to say resolves, because we want actual action happening rather than just noting it and acknowledging, oh, it's a problem. We want things to happen. That's fine, said no majority of the council chamber, because actually we agree with that, that's true. I mean, over the time we've been here, we've noticed there's a genuine dissatisfaction with the local plan among most of the councillors in this room. This bit about writing to the MP, I mean, writing by all means, but I mean, most of the motions have noticed in this council are write to the MP, write to the MP. No, we want the council to work with government to try and get the local plan resolved. It's what the residents want, which is good for the town, which is best for the town. Bring forward the local planning reforms, well, there's a consultation happening in government right now. So I'd assume the Council of Fewings wouldn't want that legislation rushed through government. I think it would like to be considered carefully. The bit about the new builds being net zero, I mean, you know, I sympathise with the idea, of course. it's just kind of unrealistic right this time because of all the other things around construction of houses at the minute and maintenance of them, of course. And the next bit about funding for the Council Local Plan to Climate and Ecological Emergency. Well, we do have a Climate Emergency Committee somewhere in this council, but they haven't done a great deal at us thus far. So we're just wondering what is the consensus from that committee? What input can they have to the council in regards to that particular aspect, which can, I imagine, can add a lot to this discussion, that particular committee. But when we hear from them, we will discuss that. So in general, apart from the odd bit, which is fine, in general, we see that the amendments are either not suitable or just splitting hairs, really, and is actually blunting the effectiveness of this motion. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ferrier. Any other member? Then I believe that Councillor Fewings, you have a right to reply.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I don't propose responding to most of that, but just in relation to the point about brownfield sites, it's a very specific amendment because actually brownfield sites can often be more environmentally prosperous and ecologically diverse than greenfield sites. So it's really important to distinguish between sites that might have had a building on them 150 years ago, but are now a cherished green space that are ecologically diverse, and a bog standard definition of brownfield sites, and that's a really important part of the amendment. And just on the Climate Emergency Working Group, if you want to join with me asking for resources to hold a meeting, please do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fewings. Councillor Whittaker, as mover of the original motion, would you wish to make a reply?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I appreciate the comments that Councillor Fewings and his colleagues have made. I just want to reiterate what Councillor Ferrier has already said. The amendment that we've put in, the motion that we put forward, I believe represents what the constituents of the Borough of Burnley require. Not what they just require, but what they actually want. I remember the last time I had the fortune to be in the town hall, sat in the gallery with countless residents who were opposing various building developments throughout the borough. The motion that we are putting forward this evening as a Conservative group has been well thought out. It's well worded. I personally do not believe it needs the amendments put forward by Councillor Fewings and his group. Brownfield sites are exactly that, brownfield sites. We don't need to name every single one throughout the borough. I understand the reasons why you are naming those particular sites, but brownfield sites are brownfield sites. We want developments on those sites as opposed to our green spaces. I think we can all agree on that. It would be the best thing for this council to do. That is why this group has put forward the motion this evening. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Whittaker. An amendment has been moved and seconded. We will now go to the vote. All those in favour of the amendment, please raise your hand. Please keep them raised until we ask you to take them down, please. Right. Down they can go. All those against, please keep them raised. And any abstentions? A single one, Alison. Abstention. Yeah. The amendment falls. We return to the substantive motion and the original motion, which is the substantive, isn't it? Yeah, the original motion. Any member who hasn't already spoken wishes to speak on the original motion? None? Yeah. You have an amendment? Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. And I've been asked to read the amendment, which I will, and it goes on a little bit. But the Burnley Local Plan, brought in by the Labour administration in 2018, has seen significant amounts of our green spaces allocated to housing development, in spite of the strong objections of some local residents and a significant number of vacant houses in the borough. This council notes that the plan was produced over the preceding 8 years in line with statutory guidance, and asserts that the plan needs to be developed in a fully sustainable way to take account of the changing conditions and demands, including the climate change emergency, increasing the needs for affordable homes to rent or buy, pressure on public transport, and certainly the pressure on health and educational services, in the central importance of achieving public support and consent for any developments. This has included land off Redleys Road, where 125 homes were now being built, in Stanton Hall area of Briarcliff, where 130 new houses are being built, and in fields behind Smithfield Avenue and Rossendale Road, allocated to housing and several new industrial units proposed for our green spaces rather than on brownfield land. This council endorses the current plan's brownfield policy and notes that 60% of housing sites in the local plan are brownfield sites. According to the monitoring report, 96% of the 1,625 new homes completed in Burnley between 2012 and 2020 were on previously developed land, including town centre apartments, conversions of derelict buildings, and former school sites and former factory sites. Developments on many brownfield sites and older housing areas requires preliminary investigation to be suitable for development, and that government investment in regeneration has been cut, making it more difficult for the council to promote the use of these sites and vacant homes. This council notes that in 2011, Localism Act, on which the current plans are based, makes provision for neighbourhood plans, which the department research has shown enables more houses to be built with a greater community consent, more affordable housing and added community facilities, and urges the council's executive to use the legislation to increase engagement with the communities and improve the quality of the local plan. This council therefore notes that the Burnley local plan is currently in its present constitution, how it's presently constituted, does not command the support from some residents within the borough. This council notes that the substance of the government's proposal planning reform is entirely unclear, with the new Secretary of State taking all proposals off the table, and a significant number of backbench Conservative MPs urging the government to drop proposals for central government to override local communities. This council instructs the leader and chief executive to engage with the Burnley Member of Parliament, asking him to work with the Conservative parliamentary colleagues and other interested parties in opposing further centralisation of planning powers aimed at building more houses regardless of local circumstances, and to arrange a meeting with the Housing Minister to promote multi-year levelling up of investment to enable the council to provide the future homes Burnley needs in places they are needed, whilst ensuring the sustainability of development and restoring public confidence in the planning process. That is our amendment, Madam Mayor, and if, with your permission, I would like to go on and explain the reasons why we would wish this to get the support of the council.
Before that, Councillor Birtwistle, do you have a seconder? Thank you, Councillor Graham. Oh, yeah, I think he moved it. Oh, sorry, Councillor Birtwistle. Sorry, my mistake. I've jumped in too early. You didn't actually move it.
I so move this amendment that I have just read out.
And is it seconded? Thank you, Councillor Graham. Please continue.
Thank you, Mr. Am I all right to carry on?
I'm going to offer it. I think you come back at the end, actually. Okay. So, any member...
Sorry, not being in the council chamber, Madam Mayor, I'm desperate. I'm getting confused.
Aren't we all? Any? Councillor Lishman.
read the proposal. He has not moved it.
He has just moved it.
No, he has formally moved it. He has not made a proposing speech.
Right. Okay. Sorry. My mistake. Councillor Birtwistle, please make your speech.
Madam Deputy Mayor, I don't believe that you make mistakes.
Next.
Madam Deputy Mayor, the existing plan was produced over 8 years ago in line with what then was statutory guidance. Dramatic changes has taken place over that time, and the policy needs refreshing and bringing up to date with sustainability now and the future being its strong base of the future. The future policy must take into consideration the conditions and demands of our future. Number one must be the climate change emergency. And I noted today, listening to the leader of the Labour Party, Keir Starmer, the Labour Party now that put that front and centre in all future developments. Any future developments, industrial, commercial or residential, must show a neutral climate change effect and full adherence to our climate change strategy. I have some information that I must confess when I read it staggered me about what happens when we develop sites on greenfield sites. For a 20-acre site, which would cover on a greenfield site, which would be for roughly 200 properties, the amount of carbon storage on that site in the carbon sink is 2,400 tonnes. So every time we bulldoze a field up to build these houses, we release 2,400 tonnes of carbon into our atmosphere. And that then no longer becomes a carbon sink. That becomes then a site covered with concrete, bricks and tarmac. So we lose that sink that is soaking up the carbon that is causing climate change and catastrophes across the world. Sustainability is not just about climate change. It includes the education of our future children and the future medical facilities of our residents in the town. Madam Deputy Mayor, our town at the moment has no spaces in our schools, and anybody in this council chamber this evening has tried to get a doctor's appointment will be able to confirm that it is the medical facilities in this town at this moment are extremely stretched. And I believe that the sustainability of a future local plan should include the availability of schooling for particularly young children. And I'm told by the county council that they fully expect a 5-year-old child to travel 3 miles to a junior school. Now, let me make it quite clear. I had a daughter, and when she was 5, I certainly wouldn't have accepted putting her on a bus to travel 3 miles to a school. That is unacceptable, and we must ensure that our future children moving into these new properties have a school close at hand where they can be educated. That is sustainability of education that we need in this town. Similarly, we also need medical facilities close at hand. Now, we have quite a number of GP surgeries that are stretched to the limit at the moment, and they are overbooked. People can't get an appointment for anything. In fact, you can get a telephone appointment, but I must confess, how a doctor can conclude a medical situation with somebody over a telephone somewhat confuses me. I've always believed that you go to the doctor, you talk to them face to face, they have a look at you, they examine you, and then decide on your medical needs. In fact, I rang up chasing up some blood tests that I needed, and the surgery said, "Well, are you ill?" I said, "Well, I don't know until I've had the blood samples taken, and you are supposed to tell me if that's my situation." So that is what we have to have. We have to have sustainability about that. It also includes public and private transport. Again, another staggering bit of information that people may be interested to hear is about the amount of tonnage of carbon emitted from a car. One individual car emits 4.6 tons of carbon when it's moving normally. If we build houses and jam up all our roads and there's the facilities aren't available for through traffic, and I believe Burnley this morning was gridlocked, that amount of carbon being emitted by cars trebles when they're stopped at traffic lights or in traffic jams. So sustainability in public transport to alleviate these things is also critical. Members, we are at a crossroads. With the COP26 coming in a few weeks and the full extent of the world's destruction by this human race over many years being exposed, it is now time for the Council to take action and deliver a future planning policy that is sustainable, and that is the important question. It has to be sustainable in every way and delivers a future for the residents now and the ones that are following us in the future. So I am proud to move this amendment, and I hope it gets the full support of this Council. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Birtwistle. Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'll be brief. I'd like to move for adjournment so that we can discuss these amendments.
Is that seconded? Thank you. We shall adjourn for 10 minutes.
Members of the Council, ladies and gentlemen, please be upstanding. Thank you.
sit. Thank you for coming back in so quickly. So we move to, where are we here? We move to any member. Councillor Afrasiab. Sorry, Afrasiab Anwar. Sorry.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'm going to keep it brief just because we've had a number of adjournments already, so I'm going to try and make my points as quickly as I can. I think we've heard that this is the first motion that's been brought by the Conservative group in quite some time. And I think at the last full council, one of the things that we heard was that when it comes to motions, the Conservative group don't actually see any benefit in writing letters, particularly to the MP, because all you do is you get a standard response on letter-headed paper, and I think we heard it again this evening, where by all means write a letter, that's fine, but we know what we're going to get. Similar to what all group leaders have received today with regards to the actual planning reforms, which don't actually tell us anything, and also tell us that maybe the MP's office is not actually speaking to our Conservative colleagues, because the letter that we've got actually says that he has not got a clue what's happening with the planning reforms. So as we've heard, I welcome the fact that they have put forward a motion. So when a motion finally comes, it could have been a motion about feeding hungry children, but we get nothing. It could have been a motion about scrapping the cut to the universal credit, but we get nothing. It could have been a motion about the raising of the national insurance. We get nothing. It could actually even have been a motion about the fuel crisis. We get nothing. And then when we finally do get a motion, what do we get? A motion that asks for nothing. Doesn't actually say what it wants to do. What is it asking for? So I actually welcome the amendment, because what we're actually doing as a council is that we're actually saying, yes, we're actually going to amend it and ask for something to be done and get some answers from ministers and get some answers from this government in terms of answer those questions around the planning reforms. What are you going to do? Hold them to account. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Anwar. Councillor Ferrier.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Well, I assume my colleague will hand in his soapbox to the next Labour member at some point. Very obviously very reasonable things to discuss, but we're discussing about the local plan, which is a motion, so anyway. He goes on about writing letters to the MP, this, that and the other. Well, I will tell you, so when you write letters to this MP, he does consider, you don't get a standard response. They're very considered, and they are given. And if you looked at the letter given by our MP in regards to this, the planning reforms, he says consultation is happening, and he urges the council and councillors to partake in that consultation, so that the planning reforms, when they come ahead, work for not only Burnley but the entire country, really, because not only, as much as colleagues and other councils across the country are doing similar. Councillor
Ferrier, I'm sorry, I have to ask you to reply on the amendment, not on the MP's letter.
Yeah, I'm getting to that, sorry, Madam Mayor. Okay, so the first line about the standing hold drive Barry Cliff and 30 new houses. Well, yes, because it's adding to what we're saying. It's part about 96% of the 1,625 new homes. Well, that's 96% of the relative developments happened thus far, but there's a lot of green space ones happening very soon, and are happening right now, as mentioned in our examples. And that's also not considered, what has been failed to mention, is the 2,000 empty homes in the borough, which I should imagine will take a good chunk out of that housing requirement in them green spaces. The last paragraph, I was in at point 3.1. We went on many brownfield sites that requires permanent investment. Well, investment in regeneration has not been cut, because there's something called the Levelling Up Fund, which is coming through, if you haven't noticed. So no, it's not been cut. Thank you about regarding the point out the Localism Act of 2011. I also point out that was also a Conservative Government Act, because they seem to be sort of very keen on having a go at the Conservative Government. The paragraph about the Council notes some sort of the government's proposed planning reforms. Well, again, it's the old argument that I mentioned before with Councillor Fewing's amendment earlier. It's the same thing all about to the MP. We want the Council to actually do and make action, rather than fobbing it off to the MP's office, as usual. Oops, excuse me. And the last paragraph about opposing further centralisation. Well, first of all, our MP does work with his colleagues and colleagues in other parties. That's how it works. And that's how things get scrutinised in Parliament. That's the function of Parliament. But the last paragraph about centralising planning powers is wholly inaccurate. Even the supposed planning reforms that was brought forward earlier this year, which I'll mention again, are under consultation, did not centralise the powers. The power was still in the Council's hands. It's just before it was going to reform how the Council handles planning, so it's fairer to the residents. But like I said, that's under consultation and is happening and will be developed. So in a nutshell, these parts we agree with in this amendment in general, but with some bits that need tweak. Before I forget, it's not in the support of some residents, that's many residents really. And I think Councillor Birtwistle will agree with many residents, because I should imagine a lot of his constituents are spoken to him about it. But basically, we appreciate the amendment, and it's rather lengthy and in-depth, but I think it's just a certain bits we need to take out of it for the sake of accuracy, really, and make it an effective motion. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Ferrier. Councillor Graham, you reserve the right to speak.
Yes, thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'm happy to second Councillor Birtwistle's amendment, and one of the reasons why I'm happy with the amendment is that because I think it makes it relevant to Burnley and relevant to the situation of the local plan as it's being delivered. I have to say that any protest by any party really on the local plan at this point is utterly meaningless. Local plans are a tool of government, not local authorities. If this council had put forward a local plan that had not allocated any greenfield housing sites, the plan would have been chucked out by the government-appointed inspector. If we didn't have a local plan, there would have been a free-for-all because our old local plan was becoming out of date, and developers would have been submitting planning applications for every greenfield field on the edge of town, far more than what was allocated in the plan. I want to emphasise the success of the local plan, and that's identified in the amendment, the fact that 60% of housing sites are brownfield sites, and that 96% of housing delivered between 2012 and 2020 is, 96% is on previously developed land, including conversions of buildings like factories and offices into homes. We do want to see what comes out of central government, because anything we amend or fulfil today will be dependent anyway on what the government says. And so long as we've got a Tory government in power in Westminster, we've got market forces at play. They won't intervene in the housing market, which is what we had in Burnley prior to 2012 when we had the Elevate programme, which allowed us to remove some of the empty homes that we had in Burnley and replace them with low-cost housing. They won't allow us to do that. They will only basically allow us to build new housing on brownfield and greenfield sites. So until some solutions are brought about from the government to deal with the empty homes that we've got, or deal with brownfield sites that are expensive to remediate for housing, then we will continue to seek government's help on changing planning policies. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Graham. Councillor Birtwistle, you have the right to reply to your amendment. Oh, sorry. Councillor Lishman, Gordon Lishman.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. And I must say, in the context of this argument, one does notice the absence of your articulate political voice in the Conservative group. I want to start just by regretting that the Green Group did not find themselves able to support this amendment, despite considerable efforts to make changes and to offer changes and to try to work with them on producing an amendment which, as far as I could see, could have very easily been agreed by all three parties. Secondly, can I just ram home the point which Councillor Graham has just made eloquently, which is that certain sorts of development are dependent on central government funding in order to establish the basis for them. That's about empty homes, but it's also about regeneration and making brownfield sites good for future development. It is not automatically the case that a developer interested in development is going to bear that burden entirely on their own. That is even less the case in terms of affordable housing which this borough needs as badly as any other. The next point I want to make is, however, just to pick up Councillor Ferrier's comment on the Localism Act, which was entirely the brainchild of my old friend Andrew Stunnell, now Lord Stunnell, who used to run the Association of Liberal Democrat Councillors for many years. And he fought his way through government, including the Conservative leaders at that time, in order to establish something which put the emphasis on neighbourhoods and communities and their participation. And that was one of the things which set something of a Liberal Democrat seal on that administration by making it easier throughout local government for communities and neighbourhoods to be heard on matters like this. I want, however, to make my strongest point about the planning reforms which are said to be under consultation.
Councillor Lishman, we're not here to debate government policy. Can we please stick to the amendment? I'm afraid I've already gone off script on this, and by allowing you to speak. It should have been Councillor Birtwistle to finish and round this up, followed up by Councillor Whitaker. So please, could you round your...
I'm not entirely sure I follow your logic, Madam Deputy Mayor, but it does seem to me that this amendment is actually talking about planning reforms and central government's planning reforms and the contribution we want to make to them. That was the context of the original motion. That's the point that Councillor Ferrier has just emphasised.
And which I drew him up short on to go back to the amendment. Could you please
The amendment is talking about the way in which this council relates to the process by which central government looks at the future of planning. And in that context, the debate about what local government can do is currently taking place between at least 4 different factions of the Conservative Party who have entirely different views, which are almost impossible to disentangle from each other. And that's why the reference in this amendment to further centralisation of planning powers, as advocated by the Prime Minister, is made with the strength it is. And I think it is important that we recognise, when we see a motion like this, that it is entirely political in intention, and it simply does not take into account the context of what government is doing and how it is creating the reality which we have before us. And on that basis, Madam Deputy Mayor, it seems to me to be important that we all learn some lessons about how we manage this sort of debate and this sort of discussion if we are to behave as a council in an orderly way. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Lishman. I did set a precedent by allowing Councillor Lishman to speak. I therefore have to extend that to Councillor Hosker. However, we will then get back to our evening business. So, Councillor Hosker, if you have something to say. It's Councillor Birtwistle next, actually.
Madam Deputy Mayor, I think Councillor Lishman's pretty well rounded up what I was going to say, but I do have to stress to members here this evening that I believe fervently that we must have sustainability in our developments. If we want to see the planet, well, if we want to see as a minimum of what it's like now, but improving to what it used to be like, we have to be sustainable in our development. There's a lot of issues that non-sustainability will create. One of them that doesn't really come home to roost until it actually happens is the ice packs, the ice floors are breaking down. The seas are rising. There's many countries that are going to get flooded. One of the things that's going to happen in times to come, and it'll be after I've gone from this place, it's not going to happen in the next few years, but if we don't get back to keeping the planet in an even keel, we'll have countries like Bangladesh being flooded out, and people in Bangladesh will have to go somewhere, and they'll want to move to other countries in the world. And that then creates friction between various countries and various groups of people. I don't want that to happen. I want the world to get on together, but we really have. This is the moment in time. The meeting in Glasgow in a few weeks' time is critical. Whether we can get the Chinese to agree and the Indians to agree or not. But Burnley, that's the town I represent, and that's a town that I hope will be the leaders in setting a precedent in future that we say we only want sustainable development. If it's not sustainable, forget it. If it is sustainable, then I will go to the ends of the world and support it. But it has to be sustainable. That is our future. That is our children's future. That is our grandchildren's future. And that, to me, is the most important thing at this moment in time for this council. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Betwick. Councillor Whitaker, you have a right of reply.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I will try to keep this brief. However, let's please all remember that the actual amendments to this motion are actually far more complex and more wordy than the actual motion itself. I'd like to start off by just basically saying to all the members here tonight, thank you very much. This motion has encouraged a great amount of debate upon this exceptionally important matter to the residents of our borough in all of our wards. I'd like to thank all of the participants so far for engaging in that. I need to address, or I'd like to address, a couple of points raised. First of all, the impact on the infrastructure on our roads, schools, doctors, hospitals, etc., mentioned by Councillor Birtwistle. This motion was put forward to show that the majority of this council believes that the local plan needs amendments. That is the entirety of it. It's not fit for purpose in its current form. That's all that the Conservative group is asking, that we look at it and basically we amend it. It's as simple as that. We all realise that things do need changing. That's why we're having this debate now. The Labour Group leader, Councillor Anwar, thank you very much for your input in this also. You mentioned at the very start that we perhaps should be moving a motion for the fuel crisis. The fuel crisis obviously was hyped up by the media, or the fuel crisis was reported by the media, which started a couple of days ago, literally. There wasn't time to put any motion in about any fuel or alleged fuel crisis. Let's get one thing straight, there isn't one. There's plenty of fuel in this country. National insurance, you also mentioned that again.
I believe Councillor Whitaker has a right to reply. He is replying to former councillors' comments.
Thank you, Madam
Although,
Deputy.
Councillor Witter, if you could get back to the amendment as quickly as possible, it would be appreciated.
Certainly. National insurance, again, that's a national government, not local government matter. Regarding articulate, I do apologise that I've lived in Burnley my entire life, 51 years, and I try my absolute best. I don't intend throwing insults at people, as obviously has been this evening. The motion it was put forward in good faith. We believe that the people of Burnley, the residents of Burnley, actually should have the chance to engage with the council. We believe that the council should engage with the government to ensure that basically we work together, as opposed to the way it seems to be doing at this moment in time. That's basically all I have to say on this. This motion was put forward completely in good faith. I'm just so pleased that the council have debated this without knocking it to one side. That was the entire aspect of it. I'm a little bit disappointed that I've not had the opportunity to actually read my motion out or read the Conservative group's motion out. But for all the people who are watching this on YouTube, it is available on the Burnley Council site. So there we go. Thank you very much. And let's carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Whittaker. There wasn't a need for you to read your motion out because it was part of the agenda. I gather Councillor White has raised his hand several times. I believe that our monitoring officer will be able to answer his question as we have passed the time for other councillors to speak. What do you want? Because we have passed the time for councillors to speak. Yeah, but we've passed that time now, I'm afraid. You missed your moment to speak. I apologise if we didn't see your hand early enough. So we've had a motion, we've had the amendment moved and seconded. We will now go to the vote. All those in favour of the amendment, please raise your hands. That's it, you can put them down now. All those against the amendment, please raise your hands. They can go down. All those abstaining, please raise your hands. The amendment stands and becomes the substantive motion. Therefore, so, Councillor White, you now have your opportunity to speak if you wish to take it. This is on the amendment, which has become the substantive motion.
My concern was there's a lot of talk about a lot of things, but nothing on the motion at all. People talked about ice caps and everything else. And all I've heard for the last hour or so is blah, 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 as Greta Thunberg would say. And that's all I could say. I'm a bit disappointed. It's just been a political games and very disappointed. I'm sorry, but I have to say it.
Councillor Hosker.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor. This motion tonight went through. I seconded it in good faith. We all know there's enough brown site places to be used. We all know ever since the local plan came in, back then when I was a UKIP councillor, I voted against your plan because it's no good for Burnley people, in my opinion. You've got your Dems on side now, and you're making it count, that's fine. But I've been a supporter against building on green land and green belt land and pushing for brown belt land to be used ever since I became a councillor. I want that known. At DC, Councillor Birtwistle and myself have voted many a time against planning applications for houses which you wanted passed, and we went against it. And when you turn around sometimes in comments, and you turn around as officers, because at the end of the day, when we're sat on these committees, we've got our own opinions. But when you turn around and accuse us of voting against certain plans, you know, planning application, you're going to cost this council a fortune because we didn't like it. I'm not going to vote on something we don't like. We went against the local plan for good reason, and we'll stand by it. So if anybody's to blame on these issues getting turned down in planning, on planning committee, development control, it'll be on your heads, not on ours. The other, just a passing comment that our leader at Labour Party said, group I should say, hopefully it just come across like leader at Labour Party. You on about our MP ignoring folk, I thought that was just unfair. But what you on about people ignoring folk, what about Julie Cooper, when she ignored 28,000 people, voters, to come out to EU? So when you go on, I'm talking about facts. You've got Gordon Birtwistle speaking tonight, and he sits there now and he wonders why he's the next MP. Thank you.
No other member wishes to speak. Councillor Whitaker, you have a final right of reply. Councillor Lishman. I think I should go with my officers as opposed to you. Councillor Whitaker, please take the floor.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Again, thank you for everybody's input in this, including the Green Party councillor there. The purpose of the motion was to highlight residents' views, which we all know were being ignored, or we certainly feel that they were. It was due to the local plan that was put together by our colleagues from the Labour Party, which now seems to be ably supported by the Liberal Democrats. It's a real shame that these massive amendment blocks have been put in place. The actual amendment itself covered what we needed to do without talking about ice caps and flooding in other countries. It was about the local plan in the borough of Burnley, the local plan that has affected people in Westbourne, Cliviger, Hapton, Padiham, not about the things that my colleagues all have mentioned there. It was about changing that and looking at it, and it was honestly put in place. Thank you very much. That's all I have to say, because I realise that time is moving on. I think we've taken up enough of this now. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll move to the vote. Those for the motion, please raise your hand. You can let those down. Those against this motion, please raise your hands. Those abstaining, please raise your hands. So the motion is carried, and we move forward to the second notice of motion. Where are we? So, Councillor Cunliffe, would you like to move your motion?
Madam Deputy Mayor, thank you. I move the motion.
Thank you. I gather there may be some alterations to the motion. Certain wording. Not? That's fine. Then all I need is a seconder of the motion. Thank you. Councillor B. Foster. I reserve the right to speak. Thank you. Any member wishes to speak? Okay. Right, then we shall move. Oh, sorry. Councillor Anwar.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Sorry, I'm lost here.
I think with regards to this motion, I don't think we need a lengthy debate as we've had on the previous motion. I think one of the things that I would like to see is that every single person in this chamber to support this motion. And I'd like to thank Councillor Cunliffe for the time that he's taken to actually work with Burnley Football Club and also recognise and acknowledge all the positive steps that Burnley Football Club have taken into tackling racism as well. And it's not just racism on the football field, it's also sometimes we see racism in society as well, and sometimes in power. I'm sure you'll all have seen the example of the former education minister who couldn't tell the difference between a famous rugby player and a famous footballer. So I think one of the things that we need to do is send out this strong message. Hopefully everybody in this chamber can get behind this motion and support it and send a strong message from the people of Burnley. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Anwar. Any other member? Councillor Whitaker.
Thank you. I just want to point out that the Premier League has already launched the next phase of its No Room for Racism initiative, sending a strong message that the league and its club will not tolerate racist behaviour anywhere, which is totally the right thing for them to do. It includes a new series of educational resource providing free teaching materials to help stimulate discussion in classrooms. It's already available to more than 18,000 primary schools in England and Wales through Premier League primary stars. And Burnley Football Club is at the front and centre of this. They don't need lecturing from us. Burnley Football Club has a wide range of anti-discrimination programmes and policies in place, including the Show Racism the Red Card programme, run by Burnley Football Club in the community, a fantastic organisation. We will always work with those who aim to stamp out our hatred for others, based purely on the colour of their skin. That is something we must all agree on. Basically, we're councillors here in Burnley. We should be dealing with things like this, but also looking at the wider issues such as dog fouling, keeping bushes and making sure the trees are cut back, etc. Recycling and refuse collection. I doubt there's any one member of this council that doesn't agree with the anti-racism sentiment outlined in this motion. None of us will disagree with that. Basically, I just want to say that it's been put forward, and I wanted to point out that there's stuff already in place with this at this moment in time, and we basically got to look at what is there by pointing those out about Burnley Football Club, etc. Thank you.
I see no other hands, so Councillor Foster, you reserve the right to speak.
Thank you, Diane. I'd just like to say really that I feel that this motion, which I would hope everybody will support in the council, sends a very positive message to all our residents in all of our diverse communities here in Burnley, that we are standing with them as a town to say that all who live here are of equal value and are welcome here, and we stand with them against all forms of prejudice wherever we meet it. And I do agree that the Burnley Football Club, we work, as you know, I'm part of Building Bridges in Burnley, and we work very closely with them, but we still need to send the message out to say that we stand against racism and any forms of prejudice and intolerance as a town. So thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Councillor Cunliffe, you have a final right of reply.
Madam Deputy Mayor, thank you. Yes, definitely. We did listen to other parties in this, and we did go and talk to BFC and BFC in the community. We got around the table, we went through all the different things that they are doing, and we recognised that in the motion. One thing that we did edge towards in this second draft and this final draft was towards online abuse, which is something that everyone is struggling to deal with in policing that, and that's why we've put towards the resolves towards that issue, which is something that everyone is working towards in bringing in the corporates, the tech corporates, to doing their policing of that as well. And that's something that's affecting us. Sometimes it's coming from outside the town, sometimes it's from within the town that gives the town a bad name. So I think it's important that we underline those in the issue. And that's all I have to really say. I mean, racism is out there. It's out there in Burnley. Only last week, we had to, or a few weeks ago, sorry now, that we had to get the letters KKK removed off the wall at the back of the Memorial Garden that backs onto BFC. So it is out there, it is alive. There is people pushing bad messages, and I'd like to echo what Councillor Foster said earlier, that we do welcome everyone in Burnley, and there is a lot of work in Burnley together to move this forward and to explore avenues to creating better social cohesion in the town. So I hope that's the spirit that everyone will pass this motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Carniff. Right, the motion has been proposed and seconded, discussed. Let's move to the vote. Those for the motion, please show. That looks unanimous. Thank you. The motion is carried. This item is carried. On to item 6. Can I point out to members that items for decision by the Council are treated as motions. Once a proposal has been moved and seconded, members may speak once and for a maximum of 5 minutes. Members may then only speak again on an amendment. Will members please note that the relevant minute extracts from the 22nd of September 2021 executive meeting relates to items 6, C, D and E have been published on the members' iPads as a supplementary to the agenda pack, and the relevant decisions for full council have been highlighted in bold in each of the minutes. Item 6A, Constitutional Update Report. Councillor Anwar, will you move the recommendation for the report?
I move the recommendation, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Graham, will you second the recommendation for the report?
Madam Deputy Mayor, I second that.
Any member? Then all those in favour, please show. Thank you. All those against, please show. Any abstentions? Thank you. Item 6B, appointments to committees, working groups and outside bodies. Councillor Anwar, will you move the uncontested nominations for Lancashire County Council's Health Scrutiny Lead Member and the appointment of Mr. David Swift as an independent member of the Audit and Standards Committee?
I move, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Graham, will you second that?
Madam Deputy Mayor, I second that.
Any member? All those in favour, please show. Those against? What abstentions there? Right, okay. In the matter of appointments to Burnley Leisure Trust, a further nomination has been received. Councillor Don Whittaker is nominated by the Conservative Group. There are 3 nominations: Councillor Frank Cant, Councillor Andy Fewings and Councillor Don Whittaker. Councillor Afrasiab Anwar, would you move the contested nominations to Burnley Leisure Trust?
I move the nominations, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Sue Graham, will you second those nominations?
I second that. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Any member? Then we'll move to the vote. Each member has a single vote. Please raise your hand and ensure it remains visible so democracy staff can count. If no majority is reached in the first round, the nominee with the fewest votes will be eliminated and a new vote taken in line with the CPR 16.6. So, all those in favour of Councillor Frank Cant, please raise your hands. You can put them down now. Thank you. All those in favour of Councillor Andy Fewings, please raise your hands. You can lower them now. All those in favour of Councillor Don Whittaker, please raise your hands. Councillor Whittaker is eliminated from this, so we go back to the vote. And I say again, those in favour of Councillor Frank Cant, please raise your hands. You can lower them now, please. Those in favour of Councillor Andy Fewings, please raise your hands. Councillor Cant, you will be the representative on Burnley Leisure Trust. Thank you very much. Item 6C, Revenue Budget Monitoring, Quarter 1, 21-22. Councillor Graham, will you move the report?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I move the report. I'd just like to say we're in a better position revenue monitoring than we were last year when the deficit at that point was 2.7 million. But it is only the first quarter of the financial year. Thank you. I move my report.
Thank you. Councillor Afrasiab Anwar, will you second the report?
I second the report, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Any member? All those in favour, please show. This item is carried. Item 6E, Revenue Budget, Latest Position and Savings Proposals. Councillor Sue Graham, will you move the report? Oh, sorry, I've missed one.
Yeah, sorry, I've got three here.
Yeah, no, sorry, I've got, you have,
Yeah.
but I've missed out. If I do them sequentially, it's item 6D.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, sorry.
I think Councillor Fewings...
And Councillor Fewings, I believe you have an interest in this. Councillor Graham, would you move the report?
Yeah, the report is self-evident, Madam Deputy Mayor. I move the report.
Thank you. Councillor Anwar, will you second the report?
I second the report, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Any member? All those in favour, please show. Thank you. Could someone bring Councillor Fewings back in, please? Item 6E, Revenue Budget, Latest Position and Savings Proposals. Councillor Graham, would you move the report?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. The current savings proposals set out are based on assumptions that are in the report. These assumptions may change. There are inflationary increases and, for example, we don't know yet the outcome of the pay settlement. So if savings proposals may have to be adjusted accordingly, then we will bring a further report later in the year. I move the report, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Anwar, will you second the report?
I second the report, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Any member? All those in favour, please show. Item is carried. Item 7, reports from committee chairs. Please can members note that for this item and the next one on strategic plan progress reports, members should not refer to named individuals or specific properties. When asking questions or making observations, questions on delegated council functions should be directed to the relevant committee chair rather than executive members. Members, please note, as per your agenda, there is no chair of Audit and Standards report, as the committee did not meet prior to the publication of this agenda. Item 7A, scrutiny. Councillor Baker, will you move the report?
I'll move that report, Madam Deputy Mayor.
And any member? Thank you. Licensing. Councillor Sumner, will you move your report?
I move the report, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Any member? Councillor Hosker.
Thank you, Deputy Madam Mayor. Councillor Sumner, as Chair of Licensing, can you tell me next time you're going to do a taxi check on vehicles, considering the fact we've got a bad MOT failure in Burnley? I'll be asking executive members the same, but I want to run it past you first. It's a shocking state of affairs. There's many drivers not wearing the badges. I've come across a few vehicles what's not either lights working, door stickers not on. I know you're a good chair, Councillor Sumner, and this is why I'm running it past you now, because I'm one of the chairs what were given out at, in May. Yours were what I could actually agree with. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Ingham.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'd just like to ask the question of how much enforcement is actually being done. We seem to be quite short on enforcement, and it concerns me not only on licensing but also on planning, because as a committee we have to do our duty to the people that voted us in, but our hands are particularly tied if enforcements aren't being conducted. We're declining planning and licensing, but if people are continually just letting under the radar because the enforcement officers aren't in place to actually do that. So I'd just like to ask the question of, is there anything that we as committees intend to do to ensure that enforcement is actually carried out? Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Sumner, would you like to reply?
Do I need to stand up? Yeah. Right. Thank you for the questions. Well, really for both of you. As you're aware, there's been no meetings for licensing since the past one. Regarding Councillor Oscar's question, I'm advised by the officers that it is an ongoing day-to-day inquiry, and they are looking into things like badges and things like that. Again, Karen, sorry, So, same again, the officers are dealing with enforcement as well. Because we haven't been in a meeting for a couple of months, I can't actually give you any figures. If I knew you were going to ask these questions, I might have been able to get these figures. But unfortunately, you've dropped it on me tonight. So what I'll do tomorrow, I will get you as much information as I can on both questions, if that's okay with you. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Summers. One further report from Development Control. Councillor Saeed Chowdhury, would you move your report? Thank you. Any member? Councillor Ingham? No. Councillor Hosker?
Thank you again, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'll get used to this yet. Chair, as you know, I'm on DC. What I get fed up of listening to on DC, in my opinion, is bad enforcement. I don't think our enforcement in Burma is up to scratch. And I say that to you because there's planning applications coming to us where the planning application's work's already been done. And then we've had other people coming up, and again, it's been refused. But again, they've defied committees and just done what they want to do. I want to know, I think being sat on DC, I think our committee in this chair should be looked into about having a stronger enforcement. It's just not good enough.
Thank you, Councillor Hosker. Councillor Chowdhury, do you wish to reply?
Madam Deputy Mayor, I don't know how I can answer the gentleman because he's there always and he knows that the officers are doing their utmost to resolve the issues. But if he needs any further information, which I haven't at the moment, I'll get it tomorrow and pass it on to him. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Chowdhury. On to item 8, Strategic Plan Progress Reports. I will take each report in order. I'll ask for any questions on the report and the executive member will respond. I'm assuming, would you prefer to have a number of questions before having to respond to them? Take that as it may. And the same procedure will then be followed for observations. Can I remind members with a question or observation to clearly quote the page number and reference and keep everything en point, clear, concise and short. Also, will members please be concise with their observations? Councillor Anwar, will you please move your report?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I move my report, and in doing so, I just want to say a few words and draw members' attention to a couple of the items on there. I think the first thing to recognise is that the way that this council and the borough is fighting back in terms of our economic recovery, and you know the signs currently are really, really positive in terms of how we're seeing footfall return to the town centre. And for those of you that missed it last month, thanks to colleagues in the room, but the artisan market will be making a return this coming Saturday, so hopefully those that couldn't make it to the last one can make it this time. I would also like to thank all of the organisations that took part in our holiday activity programme over the summer holidays, which was very well attended, and also like to put on record congratulations and thanks for all of our schools, and particularly the achievements of all of our young people and children in our schools, that despite one of the probably the toughest time that we probably face in our lifetimes in terms of what we've seen with the pandemic, and for them to continue to excel and achieve the way that they have, I think we need to send some form of congratulations to all of our secondary schools, and particularly Burnley College. And then finally, just to add that I think it's only right that when we as a council were asked to support the Afghan refugees or the evacuation programme that's taken place, that we stepped up, and as a council we've made a pledge to support any families that will that will be sent to Burnley and support those families, and we put a call out to find accommodation for those families. And it's only right that every other district and every other borough right up and down the country does the same, because these are people who, not let alone when we're talking about human rights, but these are people who supported us in our efforts in Afghanistan as well. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'll take any questions.
I have one question. Councillor Gordon-Lishman.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Two quick questions, if I may. The first...
Page and number, please.
The first relates to page 96 and PR1. It also relates to page 118 and PR6. And I'm happy for either of the executive members to answer the question, which is about the end of furlough, because both of those reports refer to the end of furlough. And can I stress how important it is that we have early and accurate information about people who are losing jobs, in particular in relation to ages and the sectors of employment where those things are happening. Because it does seem to me that as part of the economic recovery programme, we really need to be finding ways of responding as quickly as possible to help the people who need it. And it seems on the evidence so far it's likely to be younger workers and older workers who are most at risk of losing out there, and we need to develop strategies to deal with that. My question to the Leader of the Council is to ensure that that information is there and the Council is ready to act on it. My second question relates to the reference to the Levelling Up Fund, which is on the same page in the same place. I suspect the Leader of the Council was as pleased as I was to hear the intimation from the Conservative group earlier that there is going to be levelling up money for regeneration and empty homes, and I would like to ask him if he's yet heard any sign of when this will arrive.
Thank you, Councillor Lishman. Councillor Anwar, would you like to answer those?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. In response to the first question around furlough and the end of furlough and the impact that that's going to have on our economy, particularly those groups that Councillor Lishman has just mentioned, is absolutely right. It's going to have an impact. And so one of the things that we will do is, and I'm sure officers are already well on with that as well, is having a look at the figures in terms of how that's going to impact on through the Economic Recovery Board to ensure that we don't miss anybody off that. But it is going to have a devastating impact, there's no doubt about that, because it's been drawn at a time when we've had other things that are going to impact us, like I mentioned before, the universal credit, the national insurance rises, and all of those. And we need to make sure that we protect and look after all those that we can through any of our schemes and anything that we can do through the economic recovery. With regards to the Levelling Up Fund, yes, we have submitted a bid, and I welcome the comments from Conservative group colleagues who are saying that hopefully we will see something positive with regards to that. But as far as have we heard anything, as a council, no, the bid has been submitted and we await an answer from government. Thank you.
Councillor Chamberlain.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor. My point is on PE1, page 96-97, and it's regarding the English as a second language pre-entry entry level. Could Councillor Anwar let me know how many people have actually been identified for this course, as there are only 60 learners, and if there are any spare places, could he let me know, please, as I have several residents who would deeply benefit from this course. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. In response to that, I don't have the specific numbers in terms of how many places there are, but what I can do is ensure that that information is passed on to Councillor Chamberlain.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any observations? then we shall move to the Deputy Leader and Executive Member for Resources and Performance. Councillor Graham.
Yeah, sorry. Madam Deputy Mayor, I move my reports and happy to take any questions.
Thank you. Councillor Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Page 98, about the telephone. Is there anything that can be done about that long wait? If you want to speak to a council officer and you don't actually have a direct number, it takes you 3.5 minutes to get through to the operator, who then says, I'll put you through. You get a few seconds of plinky-plonky music, and then there is a silence. I've had a few residents contacting me and saying they can't get through. I've been cut off. And they've not been cut off, it's that silence. And that silence goes on for 10 seconds, which doesn't sound long, but if you're holding a telephone, it's absolutely silent. And everybody just assumes they've been cut off. And I know that residents are not getting through because they think they've been cut off. So is there anything that can be done about that system? I'm sure there must be a better system that can put you through more quickly. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Graham.
Yes, I mean, if you note on the report, I share members' concerns about the phone system. I myself have had problems getting through. When I've had problems, I get an email from the person at Liberata who deals with these things. And the first thing he says to me is, can you tell me the date, the time, and the number you were trying to get hold of? If we don't have that information, they can't go through and interrogate what happened. So I think bearing that in mind and other issues with Liberata, we've asked them to come to scrutiny committee in November and give a presentation about the performance of the contract. I think it would be very apt if, I don't know if you're a member of the scrutiny committee, no, not, but colleagues on scrutiny committee can put this question to the person himself or whoever turns up to the committee and ask specifically about the telephone system. There must be ways, we know there must be ways of it being more efficient, and we haven't found anything yet. But more pressure put on them will hopefully deal with that. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Cunliffe.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor, thank you. Page 98, PL5. The strategic commitment here is stating, we will prepare and deliver a new climate emergency strategy. The progress update doesn't really tell us about how that strategy is going along. It's great that we've got more trees coming in, and it's great that we're trying a refuse vehicle. But I think, as voices have put forward tonight on the other issue, this is a chance to cross-cut all of the issues that the council's involved with and have a complete strategy. So, I mean, can I ask the officer, can I ask Councillor Graham on this? Do we have a carbon footprint balance sheet? Can we make a pledge, or have we made a pledge to where we want to get to become carbon neutral or even carbon negative as a council, and all the activities that we do, including development control, which we're all, I think, quite in agreement with. We need sustainable development, that needs changing. This is the benchmark where we can take it from this strategy, and it needs to be in there. So do we have a baseline already? Do we have, a carbon audit? Has that been done? And do we have a baseline so we can take that forward? It would be good to hear where the strategy is at right now. Thank you.
Councillor Graham.
So in relation to that, some work has been done to deal with some of the issues that you've spoken about. A lot of the work you talk about is extremely detailed and extremely technical. And the difficulty we've had over the last year or two is actually having staff resources to deal with that kind of thing. It's not an excuse. We do need to be progressing towards this delivery. Where we can take action, and I suppose these are what you might call low-hanging fruits, we are taking action. Tree planting is extremely important. It's also important in terms of getting community engagement in climate change activities, in climate change responses. I will find out whether we have made any progress and whether we have got information on the carbon baseline, but I can't give that information at this moment. I will, find out for you. Thank you.
Councillor Hosker. You want a question? Any observations? Councillor Ferrier.
Thanks, Madam Deputy Mayor. I can refer to PF1, page 98, and I hope my colleague, Councillor Kelly, won't mind me making an observation linked to a question. But I think the exact issue referring to was the phone system in the town hall, that 10-second silence. So I think the issue there is there needs a feedback to the caller. If the caller hears a dial tone or whatever, it tells them, oh, we haven't been cut off, we're just waiting. I think it's a human nature type of thing, really. I just want to make that point. I mean, it comes to scrutiny, which I look forward to asking this when the Liberator guy comes to scrutiny. I'll probably mention it again on that committee. Thanks, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. The Executive Member for Health and Wellbeing, Councillor... Oh, sorry, are we? Councillor Baker. Could members please not wait till the last speaker and we have a silence? We are trying to move on. Please have your question or observation prepared.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Unfortunately, my clairvoyant abilities aren't as good as yours, so I have to wait while the member speaks, then I know what I'm thinking about. Can we not?
Can we have a...
Yeah, it's back with where we were on the telephone system, wherever that is. Why can't the person that's passing the person across the other person just say, there will be maybe a delayed pause of 10 seconds or so while we put you through? End of story. I don't see why you have to get Liberator involved to a hell of an extent with it and bring them to scrutiny about it. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Not yet. The Executive Member for Health and Wellbeing, Councillor Margaret Lishman, will you please move your report?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I will move my report, and in doing so, if members haven't noticed, I've noticed that Councillor Graham and I have the same piece, or at least the beginning of the same piece, on Townley Hall. Just in case anybody hasn't spotted it, I'm letting you know. What I would add in relation to that is I've mentioned the wonderful display of photographs out in the grounds, but in addition to that, inside, when you go inside the hall, we've got the Evelyn de Morgan exhibition, which is well worth a visit. And coming in early October, we have an exhibition called Hidden and Revealed, which is going to feature some of our local artists. So I think it would be very good if people could take the time to go. In addition to that, you'll notice that we have a new chair of the Leisure Trust, Donna Livesey, and I would like to give thanks to the previous chair who's just given up. Added to that, you'll all notice that I have provided for you this evening on your desks, Beat the Street. Beat the Street is an initiative that's come to Burnley for a 6-week period. All of our primary schools are signed up. It's 2 weeks old now. In the first week, we had 8,358 signed up to do it. Our target was 8,860. As of tonight, the number of people signed up to take part in Beat the Street is 9,719. So we are at 110% of our target, which is great news. I hope all of you can see the benefits of doing it, not only the exercise that you'll get, but as I keep saying, points mean prizes. So it's well worth doing it. I'd just like to give a plug as well. There is a trim on the turf taking place at the football ground on Monday the 4th of October and Tuesday the 5th, which is a pop-up hair salon that you can get appointments for if you go onto their website. All of the money that is raised through that is going to go to Burnley Football in the community, which, as you know, is one of our partners in the Burnley Together. So we definitely need to be supporting that. The other point on Beat the Street I did mean to make, that we've already walked 38,941 miles. Happy to take any questions, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Hosker.
Thank you, Deputy Madam Mayor. Councillor Richmond, I addressed you, as you know, at the Executive Committee. Oh, sorry, you want the number, don't you? PL4 103. I addressed you at the Executive Committee, as you know, where you agreed to look into the shocking state of our bowling greens. Can I further ask you tonight at this public meeting, as a full council meeting, which is made public, about looking into parks? One in particular is Lancaster Drive in Parium. I say that because some articles on there, they've been repaired that many times. It's shocking, be in dangerous condition. And I think, in all fairness, kids have nothing to do in many places, and I think, in all fairness, as a council and elected members, more investment should go into our parks. And if you, as an executive member, Councillor Richmond, I would invite you to meet me, and I'll show you around it. Thank you.
Councillor Lishman, we have one further question. Do you wish to take that at the same time? Councillor Martin Hurt.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. It's PL4 103, and I appreciate that we've had a holding response about the play review completing in December, but could I ask that the ward councillors are notified at the earliest possible opportunity as to the future of Jessie's Park, and hopefully confirmation that that will be remaining as it is. And also a quick question on page 104, again PE1. I'm pleased to see the piece about the 48 micro woodlands located in green spaces across the borough. And I just wondered if those sites have already been identified, and if they have, would we be able to get a list of those, please? And if they haven't, could residents and local councillors have some form of consultation into possible locations? Thank you.
Councillor Lishman.
Thank you. In relation to Councillor Hosker, I'm sure he, like lots of other people here, have read the response about the bowling greens, which has already been in the papers. With regard to Lancaster Drive, I am more than happy to meet you to have a discussion about it. Thank you, Councillor Hosker. In relation to Councillor Hurt, I would not like to be pushed into making any observation about any playground over the importance of any other at this stage in the development of the new playground strategy. And I think we just have to hope, and I will make sure that the consultation is full and frank and does include all ward councillors. Regard to the micro woods, I'm not quite sure about the siting, and I'm happy to come back to you.
Any observations? Councillor Kelly.
Page 103, Parks and Green Spaces. I would just like somebody, well, the councillor, to pass on our congratulations and thanks for the wildflowers that are throughout the town. Somebody said to me that they'd counted 6. I think there are nearer to 30. areas where those wildflowers have been planted, and they really, really do look good, and they've been commented on by a lot of people. So would you please pass on our thanks to the Green Spaces team for that? Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. And it's page 102, PE4, and it's with regards to Burnley Together. And it's just an observation. It's disappointing, well, not disappointing, it's heartbreaking to know that there's still over 400 people per contacts in terms of Burnley Together, and there's over 400 individuals accessing that service. In particular, there's 200 people who access that service for to use it as a food bank. So meaning there's 200 people a week in Burnley using the food bank to put food on the table. And it's heartbreaking. And it's even more heartbreaking when you hear news such as Sports Direct, who are paying their new chief executive £100 million. And guess what they're getting that money from? 97 million from business rates relief that Sports Direct have claimed. 80 million in furlough payments. That's up to £177 million in government support to pay somebody 100 million in pay and bonuses. That is absolutely disgusting. And but this is the reality of living in a Tory government. And yet, we have colleagues over here telling us about there's no enforcement, there's no planning rules, we can't enforce anything, we can't do inspections and such. Why? Because the Tory government are cutting the budget. So instead of asking silly questions to, to colleagues who are trying to work, why don't you ask those same questions
can we please stick to
your
the
local
remit
MP,
of
to
the
your leader?
executive member, please?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Anwar.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Page 105, PE2, just on Beat the Street. I know that the Councillor Lishman mentioned a number of the benefits, but one of the other benefits I'd like to highlight is that what it does is it allows the opportunity to actually go out and see our beautiful borough. I've been taking part in it with my family, with my daughter, going on the canal, discovering our parks, and each weekend we're actually planning on going to different ward and actually discovering all the boxes that are there. And I would like to thank Councillor Lishman for providing these for us, and I would like to set ourselves a challenge as elected members, as councillors, for us to get involved and see if we can beat some of the schools. Wouldn't that be wonderful? So let's set ourselves a challenge and all of us take part in it. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Sumner, did I see your hand? Yeah. There we are.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Page 103, PL4. Whistle Recreation Ground. I just want to mention the Foliage Colts. It's a good news story, I believe. The Foliage Colts, all-girl junior football team that was playing in body strips, have now been sponsored by 2 firms from Burnley Wood for new strips and training tops. The players and parents were ecstatic to hear this news. Unfortunately, the sponsors want to remain anonymous. We're fine by that, as long as they keep sponsoring us. So I just think it's a good news story, and I think Councillor Lishman will be happy to hear that. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Ishtiaq.
Thank you, Deputy Madam Mayor. It's PL4, page 103. I'd actually like to request Cabinet Member for Green Spaces and Parks to pass on my thank you to the team for responding to issue on Rakehead Park. They were brilliant. They came out and did the work very quickly. I would request and encourage the Cabinet Member to go a little bit further and look at replacing the railings and the gate to stop some of the mini motors and quad bikes racing through, which is putting young people and children at risk that are playing on the green space. And some of the residents that are elderly are quite terrified. So huge thank you to the team, but also if you can look into the further in terms of replacing the gate and the railings that are missing and have been missing for many years. Thank you.
Councillor Chamberlain.
Now. Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor. It's PL4, page 102, regarding the bereavement services. It's stated on the thing that the completion of the roof was supposed to be done by the 17th of September. Unfortunately, I attended a funeral there last week, and it still wasn't completed. Could Councillor Lishman confirm when this works will be done? As it
Councillor
is
Chamberlain, I'm sorry, that is a question, not an observation.
Fair enough. I do apologise.
I think your observation came earlier, so I think she got the gist.
There you go, Chris.
Councillor Ferrier.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I refer to, I believe it's PL4, I'm going to double check. Yeah, PL4 104. I think I'm quite glad to see about the biodiversity thing with the macro woodland and the flowers. I mean, it's been a nice addition to the town. I mean, I drive through Stanley Park occasionally on my way home, and it's nice to see the flowers on the side, and it really uplifts the town brilliantly. That. I mean, obviously, it's not a question, it's just a nice point. I'd like to not really point out, but just mention, because I remember when I was only, say, that big, a child, having the nice flower display on the embankment next to the canal near the Tesco's. And it'd be great to see that again, but obviously that is probably quite a bit down the line, I should imagine. But it'd be fantastic to see that little bit of memory come back again in Burnley. I also be from it. I wondered where that soapbox disappeared. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Lishman, do you want to reply?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Begin with Councillor Anwar, and I think, yes, the reason you've all got the maps and the cards is so that you join up and get started if you haven't already, and the point is very well made. In response to Councillor Kelly, yes, I will certainly pass on your thanks. I think we've all thought how nice it is to see wildflowers rather than traditional displays. Councillor Hussain, yes, I agree with the points you made around Burnley Together and the service. That's why we had the session a couple of weeks ago to try and plan for the future and how we can make a more sustainable life for people in Burnley. And one of the areas that is going to be looked at very carefully is to have some sort of food strategy, looking at the food bank, but looking long-term as well for people's well-being. In relation to Councillor Sumner, very good news. Not only do they get the clubhouse sorted, they get a new strip as well. And Councillor Ishtiak, as far as I'm aware, they have put some sort of temporary block where there is an issue, and I know that they are looking into it at the present time. I note your comment, Councillor Chamberlain. That's the most up-to-date information I've got. I will check into it and make sure someone gets back to you. And in relation to Councillor Ferrier, yes, we'd like to see it back, and I'll pass that on as well. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. Right, Executive Member for Housing and Development Control, Councillor John Harbour, will you please move your report?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I'm happy to move my report.
And any questions? Can I please remind councillors that this is not the place to work to air personal beefs or to identify streets, properties or people. Councillor Hosker.
Thank you, Deputy Mayor. Madam Mayor, thank you. Councillor Arbour.
Can we have the reference, please?
Oh, sorry, yeah. It's PL2 106. I was unable to speak, as you know, at the executive because some of these issues I've already brought up. Because I've already brought them up at past, they wouldn't let me bring them up at your executive on your last day meeting. My concerns are, since I brought it up last time, nothing's been done. Nothing at all. Can I ask you, I'm just looking at your report here, and it has on Trinity, Queensgate, Duke Bar, Leyland Road, Healywood Road, Ganner, Stonyholm, Danes House, and then it comes to Padiham. Ingham Street, Padiham, Warren Street, Padiham. I phoned you up and I asked you about further streets to be considered in Padiham, what needed to go on restricted licensing. Is there an issue with Padiham? Because you seem to be getting a lot here for Birmingham, ignoring Padiham.
Any other member? Councillor Harbour, do you wish to make a reply?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Councillor Oscar's right. We have had this conversation on a number of occasions, and I'll give him the same answer tonight as I've gave him on 3 previous occasions. He's asking about selective licensing. And because it mentions Gano and Trinity and Burnley Wood, that doesn't mean that selective licensing is throughout those areas. It's just in certain parts of the ward. It mentions Padiham, and it talks about Ingham Street, Lawrence Street, Cobden Street. That is a small selective licensing area. I've explained to Councillor Oscar on a number of occasions regarding selective licensing. If I had my way, I'd put selective licensing throughout the town. But we can't do that. Government legislation, his government's legislation, won't let us do that. So if he wants to talk to his colleagues, his MPs and the people in power who can make it possible for us as a council to introduce selective licensing throughout the town, then please help us with that. But I've explained to him before, and I'll explain it again, and most members understand this. When you introduce selective licensing, it has to meet criterias, 4 criterias. And unfortunately, and I've already asked the question for Padiham, because I'd like to see selective licensing extended in Padiham around the Stockbridge Road, Russell Terrace, Graham Street, Pitt Street area. Officers have looked at that and looked at the figures, and unfortunately, out of the 4 criteria what's needed, officers are telling me, and I've no reason to disbelieve them, that we only meet criteria on 1 of those. So if we sent an application down to the Secretary of State which doesn't meet the criteria, the Secretary of State will just send it back. So I hope I've been pretty clear there at this time, Madam Deputy Mayor. As I said, he keeps asking the question and I keep giving him the same answers. Thank you.
Any observations? Councillor Hosker.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, Deputy Mayor. Councillor Harbour, I don't recall mentioning Cobden Street. Oh, sorry, it's PL2 106. Also, I'm asking you again tonight, publicly, because I'm sick of asking you. I've asked you about many times, it just goes straight over your head. In fact, you've got many areas in Birmingham, there's about much for Birmingham. Have you ever considered moving there?
Councillor Harbour.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I noticed at the start of this section of the meeting, you asked for members to treat each other with respect and don't make it personal. And again, it's suggesting that I move to Burnley. But I also looked at the expressions on some of his colleagues when he made that remark. And I have to say that the majority of his colleagues were embarrassed by what he said there. Now, he talks about Cobden Street. You know, I never mentioned Cobden Street. I'll try and explain it to him again. And I appreciate that some of his members do know what I'm talking about. I have, on 3 occasions, tried to explain to Councillor Oscar what selective licensing is and what it means. I thought, and I think all members can accept this, that I was pretty clear when he mentioned Gano, Trinity, Burnley Wood, etc. I'll say it again. All those areas, it's only part of those areas where selective licensing is covered. The Padiham side of things is the Ingham Street, Cobden Street, Lawrence Street area, which is covered by selective licensing. And unfortunately, and he might not want to hear this, because it's been so successful in Padiham, the selective licensing round there, unfortunately, that area now, to my dismay, doesn't meet the criteria anymore. It's basically gone up. House prices have gone up. Antisocial behaviour has gone up. It's not perfect. Nowhere in the borough is perfect, but it's a lot better there. So please, Councillor Oscar, you can throw as many comments about me as you like, but just listen to what's being said to you. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I have 2 observations, Councillor Harvey, if that's okay.
References, please.
Oh, sorry, reference PL2, page 106, regarding selective licensing in the Burnley Wood, Healy Wood, Leyland Road, Ingham Street, Lawrence. So I'm really concerned more about the Burnley Wood area because it's one of my wards. The selective licensing for Burnley Wood and Healy Wood must carry on. I agree it's not being fully received by some landlords and some tenants, and it could be better. But if it gets withdrawn, then the areas will decline faster than we are seeing at the moment. It must continue. Thank you, that's one. Second one, PL2, page 107, regarding private rented disrepair. You speak heavily about the enforcement team. Well, I welcome the current plans on enforcement and also the additional planned inspections yet to come throughout the borough. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Sumner. Unfortunately, due to your enthusiasm, I may need to suspend standing orders. Will anyone second me in that? Thank you, Councillor Anwar. To extend the meeting beyond 9:30. We still may make. Yeah, I've been seconded. Yeah. All right. Yeah. We still may make it if people can be concise in their questioning and observation. Oh, right. Sorry. Anyway, shall we vote on that? For suspension. It means we have to come back if we don't vote for it. Yeah, exactly. Right. Yeah. Right, we'll continue. Oh, sorry. All those against? Carried. Yeah. Right, if we can continue, please, with the Exec Member of Community and Environmental Services, Councillor B. Foster.
Councillor Harbour, respond to said question.
Sorry, I'm jumping ahead. Councillor Harbour.
My apologies, Councillor Sumner. I'm more than happy to answer the question. Can I just say to colleagues as well, Madam Deputy Mayor, that I do apologise because I have my back to colleagues while I'm speaking as well. As regarding selective licensing in Burnley Wood, my colleague does know that there is a consultation process going on around there at the moment. I can't preempt what that consultation will come back with, but you know, I'm mindful of what he's actually saying to me there. And again, I appreciate his remarks regarding the work what's being done on the disrepair cases. Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. And Councillor Chamberlain.
Thank you very much, Madam Deputy Mayor. I also echo Councillor Sumner's wishes on the selective licensing, PL2, page 106 for Burnley Wood. I actually live within Burnley Wood and have seen it firsthand how effective the selective licensing can be. I will say there are some holes in it where certain residents haven't been pulled to task as yet, but I'm hoping that that will take effect very shortly on them, as I've been speaking to the council officers regarding these people. It is something that's really important and it is wholly effective when utilised properly. Thank you.
Executive Member for Community and Environmental Services, Councillor B. Foster, will you please move your report?
Yes, I'll move my report, and in so doing, I'd just like to inform all councillors and residents who no doubt are concerned about the fuel shortage that we are all aware of. Abasa, our waste services partner, have said very clearly that they do have their own fuel arrangements normally, and also do have a contingency plan in place. So hopefully that means I can reassure everyone that there'll be no disruption to our waste services. Of course, that means unless the situation goes much, much worse. But other than that, there are contingency plans. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foster. Any questions? Councillor Hosker.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. Councillor Foster, again, I go back to Thursday night. I go back to your meeting at Executive, and I weren't able to answer your questions because I brought questions to you before and I weren't able to answer.
Can we have a reference, please,
Councillor
Councillor Hosker?
Of course you can. Bear with me. PL1. Page 113. 113. No, it's not. It's 112, sorry. Councillor Foster, as I was saying, I did ask you a couple of questions regarding taxi licensing. I've asked Councillor Sumner tonight. I'll ask you the same as an executive member. Why is it we've still got an outstanding failure rate on taxis? Why is it but still taxi drivers aren't putting the door stickers on side? Recognising when people get a taxi, they know which firm it is. Wearing a badge tells them which driver it is. It's a concern. Another issue is antisocial behaviour. Can you give me an update on antisocial behaviour and issues in Padiham, please? And Padiham and Hapton, in particular area, Bedford Place, and down near Padiham Baths on Park Road. People just think they're being ignored with police. I've assured people tonight, I'll bring it up at this council meeting tonight, your executive member, what you're doing about it.
One moment. I believe Councillor Baker has a point of order.
Along with other issues. She's executive member.
Thank you for raising that. Thank you. Councillor Foster, would you like to respond on either of those
Yes,
points?
I would. I'm happy to respond, Madam Deputy Mayor. Could I just say that licensing does come under my portfolio, the overall responsibility, you know, in that sense, to ensure that things do happen within it in that sense, yeah? So can I just say, at the last licensing committee, which I was there for, of course, strategies were put in place around MOTs, and you were present and heard all of that, Councillor Oscar. And of course, also at that licensing committee, it was said very clearly that if anybody has any concerns around what is not happening within taxis, such as badges being shown or anything like that, then they were able to ring up and go to licensing, the officers who have responsibility, and report, giving the registration number and whatever information they could about who was not doing what they should do, and action would be taken. That was given as an assurance at the licensing committee. So all I can do is to say, please, for anybody, if you feel there is infringements going on, so that our residents are not safe in the taxis, health and safety wise, and particularly with COVID happening at the time, please do get in touch with the licensing, the officer in licensing, and hopefully, and also get hold of me, and I'll just ask why. Well, I'm sure action would be taken, I have to say, on behalf of the officers. To do with antisocial behaviour, again, what happens with the system with antisocial behaviour is that we have a multi-agency task group that meets of all partners regularly once a month, which I chair. And what happens is that police and data is provided at that meeting, and as a result of that, hotspots, because of people ringing in and giving information, then that becomes a hotspot where then the police and other partners work together to try to bring about a solution to the antisocial behaviour. So if there is, I'm not aware at Mattack, I have to say, that either Bedford Place or Paddy and Baths has been raised as come through the data as a hotspot. So please ask your residents, whoever it is, to ring 111. I'm right, aren't I? Yeah, 111. Yeah, 101. Is it 101 or 111? Just help me. Pardon? 101. Yeah, 101. That they need to ring that when they see any antisocial behaviour with the date, the time, and what it is. And if they continue to do that, it will be added up and it will become a hotspot, and action by the multi-agency group, Mattack, will be taken, plus in partnership with the police. We have lots of partners of lots of different agencies. Thank you.
Councillor Hussain.
Mayor, and page 112, and I'm not sure. It's with regards to antisocial behaviour. I can't find the PE, but it's on page 1112. And would the exec member agree with me with regards to increasing antisocial behaviour as a lack of funding cuts made to youth services? And generally, the question my colleague from Hapton asked with regards to enforcement, with regards to licensing, all that requires a great deal of staffing. Since I've been a councillor in 2010, the council has gone from employment of 600 council officers to 200. Would she agree with me that significant cut by government has had a direct effect on things like enforcement, things like licensing, on things like antisocial behavior. Moreover, would my colleague agree with me and say the direct cuts to youth services has come from Lancashire County Council? Lancashire County Council looks after services such as youth services, and that if there are no youth off workers, then obviously there will be more antisocial behavior. If that is the case, would she agree with me on these, and would she point out how can we get more funding into Burnley?
Councillor Hussain, I'm afraid the exec member can't reply for Lancashire County Council. Could you ask her the direct question?
Direct question would be, is result of county council funding having an effect on antisocial behaviour all around Burnley? Thank you.
I'm sure. Thank you, Councillor Hussain. And yes, I certainly do agree in the sense of, I think majority of people, if you'll permit me, Madam Deputy Mayor, I'm sure a number of people know that I was a full-time professional youth worker with LCC for over 40 years. And it breaks my heart, I have to say, to see that there is no youth work in open youth centres in Burnley or across Lancashire anymore. And all we are doing is making problems for the future, because our young people are just in their bedrooms, on their iPads, iPhones, etc. And all of that is open to all sorts of problems. I don't want to go on, but people can see that I'm very passionate about the need for more young people so that young people can meet together informally and in a safe environment to grow up, really. And that's what youth work did for them. Thank you.
Councillor White.
Thank you. Madam Deputy Mayor, so reference PL1, page 111, to electric refuse vehicles. Good to see that we're looking at purchasing one of these now on trial. I'm just wondering who the manufacturer is, what size of the vehicle, if we have any information. Thank you.
Councillor Foster.
I'm sorry, I don't know such detail, but I will find it for you and get it to you. Thank you.
Any observations? Councillor Hussain. Oh, sorry, hang on 1 second. Are you questioning or observing? Sorry, last question, Councillor Baker.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. First of all, may I apologise profusely to Councillor Hosker for that comment I made. Totally out of order, totally wrong. She is responsible for it. My question now to the executive member is, why is there nothing in your report about environmental health and licensing, which would have drawn my attention to it? Has nothing happened on licence? I know I've applied for a licence, and while I'll go on that now, I'll kick off on one. I applied for a licence, and I sent a cheque. They refused me cheque and sent it back. We don't take cheques anymore.
Baker,
Why?
This is not the forum to air your personal grievances.
Why does the council not take cheques anymore? Phrase it that way, Madam Deputy Mayor. Thank you for your patience.
I don't really know what the question was in there, because I don't know why the council don't take cheques anymore, sort of thing. Yeah, so thank you.
We will move to observations. Councillor Hussain.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. On page 112, observation with regards to the question asked. All I wanted to, I didn't want to sound arrogant or something, anything like that. All I wanted to do was raise awareness of where we find ourselves as a council. from being a council with 600 odd employees in 2010 to being a council just of under only 200 employees. As such, things like antisocial behavior and work around that, work around enforcement will be affected. And it's important that we respect our colleagues who are trying to do...
Point of order, Councillor. He's making an observation.
So the observation I was trying to make is that we as a council are finding it difficult to work within our budgets, and that we should be respectful to people like Councillor Harbour, like Foster and other members of this executive, whether they be at Borough Council or County Council or wherever, to be respectful and to understand that they are having some
Councillor
difficulties.
Hussain, what exact point
Thank you.
or are you replying to in your observation?
The point is it's important
in
that
your observation, what reference point?
The reference point I'm trying to make is...
no, the reference point within the paper.
Right, okay. With regards to antisocial behaviour and effects of funding cuts, that has been on things like antisocial behaviour. Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Sumner.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. PL1, it actually starts on Safer Streets project. It starts on 112, but the paragraph I want to mention is actually on 113. I welcome the news that an application has been submitted for more funding for the Safer Streets grant, as some people from the Burnley Wood area missed out on the first phase funding and are in need of items that Safer Street grants provide. Thank you.
Councillor Hosker.
Thank you again, Deputy Madam Mayor. An observation is, can you take an observation in mind? I'll put it in a way I can.
Can you give me the reference as well?
So yeah, it's no. PL1. Yeah, it is. Yeah. PL1 112. I just wanted. I'll put it under an observation, Councillor Foster. When I mentioned Padiham and antisocial behaviour, I've been observing but this troublesome area in Waterside Mews in Padiham, with stone floors being thrown from the greenway. They've damaged a greenhouse, and what I'm more concerned about in my observations, Councillor Foster, is the people they're doing it to, the old senior citizens. And when I say senior, I mean in the 80s. They shouldn't have to put up with that sort of thing. Going on to a remark made, second term of office, that's fine, but if you didn't get suspended in the first place, you won't be on a second term, would you?
Can I ask council colleagues, please be responsible in what you say and respectful in what you say. We're all here for the betterment of Burnley. We all represent our residents. Please respect that when you're speaking to each other. Councillor Foster.
Can I say thank you to Councillor Hussain for his observations, and can I thank you as well for about Burnley Wood, and hopefully we'll be successful in that. Can I just ask Councillor Oscar, have you reported this antisocial behaviour that you've seen on Waterside Mews? Have you rung 101 and reported it so that something can be done about it? Can I just ask, in future, would you please, if you haven't already done that, would you please do that? Because that's the only way that
Councillor Hosker.
it'll be actioned. And then I'm sorry, I didn't understand the last part of what you said about the second term of office. Is that possible
I think,
that
I
can be
think
explained?
Councillor
Or
Foster, you can discount those comments and we'll carry on.
okay, thank you. Okay.
I have Councillor Chamberlain. Did you? Sorry, have I? Right. Okay. So we'll move on. Move on to Executive Member for Economy and Growth, Councillor Asif Raja. Will you please move your report?
Thank you, Madam Deputy Mayor. I move the report. In doing so, I would like to firstly thank the officers for the work that they have been doing over the last few months, as well as trying to get things back to normality as we start to come out of the pandemic. There has been a lot of positive news in and around Burnley and Padiham over the last few months. Firstly, I'd like to welcome the 4 new businesses that have set up in Padiham Town Centre. It goes to show the realm works have had a positive impact on existing and new businesses and have encouraged new ones to set up too. I would also like to acknowledge the series of events that have been happening lately in Burnley Town Centre, such as the 6 weeks staycation event and the artisan markets. These events have been very successful in bringing people into our town centre and creating a vibrant atmosphere. Credit to those involved in making this happen. Finally, it's good to see that we are not facing an economic disaster we thought may happen this time last year. I move my report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Any observations? Then thank you, everyone. Item 9, questions.
None have been received, Madam Deputy Mayor.
And then thank you, everyone. That concludes the business for tonight's meeting. And I'd like to thank you all for your patience and a safe journey home. And also to remember that the second artisan market will be taking place this Saturday.